Are you eating healthy, grabbing a handful of nuts every day and still feeling inflamed, tired, gaining weight, or watching your cholesterol and blood sugar slowly creep up? Here's a surprising truth that catches many people off guard. Not all nuts are healthy, especially after 60. In fact, some of the most popular nuts can quietly accelerate inflammation, disrupt your metabolism, and strain your liver and blood vessels as you age. And that's not because nuts are bad. It's because your body changes after 60, and foods that once worked for you may now work against you. Here's what's really going on inside your body. As we age, three major systems shift at the same time. Insulin sensitivity declines, the liver becomes less efficient at handling fats, and chronic low-grade inflammation rises. This combination means that the type of fat you eat matters more than ever, not just the amount. Nuts are often marketed as a superfood, but nutritionally they are dense packages of fats, plant proteins, and bioactive compounds. Some of those compounds protect your blood vessels and brain. Others, especially when oxidized, overprocessed, or eaten in excess, can do the opposite. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your metabolism like a fireplace. When you burn clean, dry wood, you get warmth and steady energy. But if you throw in damp wood, treated lumber, or too much fuel at once, you don't get warmth. You get smoke, irritation, and residue that clogs the system. Some nuts burn clean. Others create metabolic smoke. And after 60, your body is far less forgiving of that smoke. What the research shows is that the fatty acid profile, processing method, portion size, and even when you eat nuts all determine whether they protect your heart and brain or quietly increase oxidative stress, insulin resistance, and arterial aging. This is why two people can both eat nuts daily. One improves cholesterol and cognition. The other develops inflammation, weight gain, or digestive issues. Same food, very different outcome. In this video, I'm going to break this down clearly and calmly, just like we would at a whiteboard in clinic. You'll learn which 4 nuts you should avoid or strictly limit after 60, and why which 4 nuts are truly protective for longevity, brain health, and metabolism. How roasting, oils, and packaging change, how nuts affect your body, the right timing and portions that prevent blood sugar and lipid spikes, and how to use nuts as a tool, not a trap, for healthy aging. This isn't about fear. It's about precision. Because when you choose the right foods for your biology, aging doesn't have to mean decline. It can mean stability, clarity, and resilience. If this kind of science-based practical guidance is helpful, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you optimize your health naturally. Next, I'll give you a clear overview of the 6 science-backed principles that determine whether a nut helps you or harms you after 60. And once you understand these rules, food labels will never fool you again. Here's the first major mistake people over 60 make with nuts. And it's one of the most misunderstood issues in nutrition. Here's what's really going on inside your body. Most people assume that because nuts come from plants, they're automatically anti-inflammatory and heart healthy. But physiology doesn't work on labels, it works on fat chemistry. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your body like a fireplace. When you were younger, you could throw in almost any kind of wood and it would burn cleanly. But after 60, the fireplace becomes more sensitive. If you burn dirty, resin-heavy wood, it produces smoke, soot, and residue that clogs the chimney. In your body, that dirty wood is excess omega-6 fat, especially when it's oxidized. Many commonly eaten nuts, especially peanuts, cashews, and conventional roasted mixed nuts, are extremely high in omega-6 fatty acids. Omega-6 fats are not evil. Your body needs them, but the ratio matters. What the research shows is that aging cells become more vulnerable to omega-6-driven inflammation, especially when insulin resistance is present. Excess omega-6 fats convert into inflammatory signaling molecules that irritate blood vessels, stiffen arteries, and interfere with insulin signaling. This is why someone can be eating healthy, snacking on nuts every day, and still see rising triglycerides, stubborn belly fat, joint pain, or brain fog. Now, here's the part almost no one talks about. After 60, your liver clears oxidized fats more slowly. When nuts are roasted at high temperatures, stored for months, or fried in seed oils, the fats inside them oxidize. Those oxidized fats enter your bloodstream and trigger immune activation quietly, chronically every day. You don't feel it immediately, but over time, this drives vascular inflammation, fatty liver progression, accelerated cognitive aging, and this is why peanuts deserve special attention. Despite their reputation, peanuts are technically legumes, not nuts. They're particularly prone to mold contamination and aflatoxins, which stress the liver. In an aging body, this adds to detox burden and inflammatory load. Cashews are another surprise. They're higher in carbohydrates than most nuts and have a fat profile that skews heavily omega-6. In insulin-resistant individuals, which includes the majority of adults over 60, cashews can quietly spike insulin and block fat burning. So, what's the solution? This is not about fear, it's about precision. Here's the practical protocol. First, limit high omega-6 nuts to occasional use, not daily staples. That means peanuts, cashews, and most commercial nut mixes. Second, avoid roasted nuts with added oils. If a nut is roasted in sunflower, soybean, or canola oil, you're stacking omega-6 on top of omega-6. Third, keep portions tight. One small handful, about 20-30 grams, is a serving. Anything beyond that becomes a metabolic load, not a benefit. Fourth, pair nuts with protein or fiber, not refined carbohydrates. This stabilizes insulin and reduces fat storage signaling. And finally, choose freshness over flavor. Raw or lightly dry roasted nuts with minimal processing are far less inflammatory than heavily roasted flavored varieties. If this is helpful so far, consider subscribing. I post content like this every day to help you make food decisions that actually work with your biology, not against it. In the next section, we'll talk about one nut that almost everyone over 60 avoids, but absolutely should not. It supports blood vessels, brain health, and longevity when eaten correctly. Here's the second critical insight, and this one flips conventional wisdom upside down. Here's what's really going on inside your body. As we age, one of the fastest declining systems in the body is the vascular repair system. The ability of your blood vessels to stay flexible, responsive, and well-lined. This decline is not just about cholesterol, it's about nitric oxide, mitochondrial energy, and endothelial function. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Imagine your blood vessels like highways. When you're younger, the roads are smooth, wide, and well-maintained. Traffic flows easily, but over 60, if repair crews stop showing up, cracks form, lanes narrow, and congestion builds. That congestion is high blood pressure, poor circulation, cold hands and feet, brain fog, and fatigue. Now, here's the surprising part. One nut, often feared because of its fat content, actually supports the body's natural repair crews when eaten properly. I'm talking about walnuts. Walnuts are unique among nuts because they contain alpha-linolenic acid, a plant-based omega-3 fat. This matters deeply after 60. While fish oil gets most of the attention, studies show that plant omega-3s play a critical role in endothelial repair, especially in people with metabolic dysfunction. What the research shows is that regular walnut consumption improves blood vessel elasticity, LDL particle quality, not just quantity, inflammatory markers like CRP, cognitive performance tied to cerebral blood flow. Here's the key distinction. Walnuts do not act like calorie-dense snack foods. They act like vascular signaling foods, but only if you eat them correctly. Most people make two big mistakes. Mistake number one is eating candied or sugar-coated walnuts, which completely cancels their metabolic benefit by spiking insulin. Mistake number two is eating walnuts alone late at night in large quantities that can overwhelm digestion and interfere with sleep. Here's the whiteboard explanation. Walnuts deliver omega-3s that your body converts into anti-inflammatory signaling molecules, but that conversion depends on insulin sensitivity and micronutrient availability, especially magnesium and vitamin B6. So, the protocol matters. Here's how to use walnuts after 60 for maximum benefit. First, limit the dose. 4 to 6 walnut halves is enough, more is not better. Second, eat them earlier in the day, ideally with a meal that includes protein and fiber, like a salad with olive oil, leafy greens, and wild fish or eggs. Third, chew thoroughly. This sounds simple, but breaking down fats properly improves absorption and reduces digestive stress. Fourth, store them correctly. Walnuts oxidize easily. Keep them refrigerated in an airtight container. Rancid fats create inflammation, not health. Now, here's the longevity connection. Populations with the highest rates of healthy aging don't avoid fats. They choose fats that communicate safety to the body. Walnuts tell your metabolism, we're not under threat. Repair can proceed. That message matters for brain aging, arterial stiffness, hormonal signaling, even skin elasticity. And this is why walnuts show up consistently in longevity research, not as snacks, but as strategic nutrients. If this insight is helpful, let me know by liking the video. It helps this message reach people who need it. In the next section, we'll expose a nut that's marketed as heart healthy, but may quietly sabotage blood sugar and fat loss after 60, even if you eat just a small amount. This next section is crucial because it explains why some healthy nuts quietly accelerate aging after 60, even when eaten in small amounts. Here's what's really going on inside your body. After 60, your metabolism becomes far less forgiving of rapid glucose signals, not just sugar, but anything that behaves like sugar once it enters your bloodstream. And this is where one very popular nut causes problems. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of insulin like a doorbell. When you're young, ringing the bell gets a quick response. The door opens, nutrients go in, and everything resets. But with age, that doorbell gets sticky. Ring it too often, and eventually no clears throat, one answers. That's insulin resistance. Now, here's the surprise. Some nuts, despite being natural, ring that doorbell far louder than people realize. The biggest offender? Cashews. Cashews are technically not even nuts. They're seeds, and they behave very differently in the body. They are significantly higher in carbohydrates and lower in fiber compared to most nuts. Once digested, they convert rapidly into glucose. What the research shows is that foods with this profile can spike insulin disproportionately, increase triglycerides, suppress fat-burning enzymes, accelerate visceral fat storage, and after 60, this matters more than calories ever will. Here's the whiteboard breakdown. The whiteboard. When insulin rises, your body switches from repair mode to storage mode. Fat burning shuts off. Autophagy slows. Hormonal signaling shifts towards survival rather than regeneration. Now add cashews into the picture. They're easy to overeat, low in satiety signaling, and often roasted in inflammatory seed oils. That combination is metabolically disruptive, especially for people trying to protect their heart, brain, and waistline. This doesn't mean cashews are toxic. It means timing and context matter. Here's the protocol if you're over 60. First, avoid cashews as a standalone snack. That's when they cause the most insulin disruption. Second, if you eat them at all, keep the portion extremely small, no more than 6 to 8 pieces and only with a high-fiber protein-rich meal. Third, never eat them at night. Nighttime insulin spikes interfere with growth hormone release and overnight brain repair. Fourth, avoid flavored honey-roasted or oil-roasted cashews completely. Those are metabolic landmines. Here's the deeper aging connection. Insulin resistance doesn't just affect blood sugar. It directly impacts brain glucose utilization, testosterone and estrogen balance, mitochondrial efficiency, inflammation in joints and arteries. That's why people can eat clean but still feel foggy, tired, or stuck metabolically after 60. Longevity is not about avoiding all carbs. It's about choosing foods that whisper to insulin, not shout at it. Cashews shout. If this explanation is helping you see food differently, consider subscribing. I post evidence-based content like this every day to help you age stronger, not smaller. In the next section, we'll talk about a nut that protects your brain, but only if you prepare it the right way. Done wrong, it can actually increase inflammation. All right, let's build on that because this next one surprises a lot of people. Here's what's really going on inside your body when it comes to peanuts, especially after 60. Let me be very clear up front. Peanuts are not inherently evil, but they are one of the most misunderstood foods in aging nutrition. And the way most people eat them quietly fuels inflammation. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your immune system like a smoke detector. When you're young, it's sensitive but accurate. It goes off when there's real danger. As you age, that detector becomes hypersensitive. Small signals can trigger chronic low-grade inflammation. Now imagine eating something every day that keeps releasing a faint wisp of smoke. That's what peanuts can do in an aging body. First important point, peanuts are not nuts, they're legumes. And legumes contain lectins, plant proteins that can irritate the gut lining when digestion and stomach acid are weaker, which commonly happens with age. Here's what the research shows. Lectins can increase intestinal permeability, leaky gut, trigger immune activation, raise inflammatory markers like CRP, interfere with nutrient absorption. When the gut barrier is compromised, inflammation doesn't stay in the gut. It spreads systemically, affecting joints, blood vessels, and even the brain. Now let's talk about peanut oils. Most commercially available peanuts and peanut butters are roasted at high temperatures. This oxidizes their omega-6 fats, creating lipid peroxides, compounds that accelerate cellular aging. Here's the metabolic consequence. Excess omega-6 fats compete with omega-3s in your cell membranes. That shifts your body toward a pro-inflammatory state, which worsens insulin resistance and slows tissue repair. After 60, your body is no longer resilient enough to buffer this imbalance. This is why people say, "But I eat peanut butter every day and still feel inflamed." It's not about calories, it's about biochemical signaling. Now here's the nuance, because this is where people get confused. Peanuts can be metabolically neutral if three conditions are met. First, they must be dry roasted or boiled, not oil roasted. Second, they must be organic to reduce mold contamination. Peanuts are one of the most common sources of aflatoxins, compounds linked to liver stress. Third, the portion must be small, about 1 tablespoon of peanut butter or a small handful of peanuts, no more than 2-3 times per week. Anything beyond that pushes inflammation faster than your aging detox systems can clear it. And here's the big mistake people make. They eat peanuts late at night. Nighttime is when your brain clears inflammatory waste through the glymphatic system. Inflammatory fats and lectins interfere with this cleanup process, which may contribute to brain fog and poor sleep quality. So, here's the practical protocol. If you're over 60, avoid peanuts as a daily habit. Never eat them at night. Skip flavored or sweetened peanut products. If you eat peanut butter, choose natural, single-ingredient versions. Pair with fiber or protein, never alone. Now here's the key reframe. Longevity nutrition isn't about demonizing foods, it's about understanding how aging changes your tolerance. What worked at 40 may quietly sabotage you at 60. If this is helping you rethink healthy foods through a longevity lens, stay with me and consider subscribing if you want clear science-based guidance without extremes. In the next section, we'll talk about a nut that actually lowers inflammation, protects the brain, and supports blood vessels, but only when you avoid one critical mistake most people make. Here's the next insight, and it's one of the most protective choices you can make after 60 when it comes to brain health, circulation, and inflammation. Here's what's really going on inside your body. As we age, two systems decline in parallel: mitochondrial energy production, microirculation to the brain and muscles. When these systems weaken, you feel it as fatigue, slower thinking, poor balance, cold extremities, and slower recovery. This is not just aging, it's a fuel and signaling problem. Let me explain this with a simple analogy. Think of your cells like smartphones. When the battery is strong and the charging cable is intact, everything works smoothly. But if the charger frays and the battery degrades, performance drops, even if the phone looks fine from the outside. One nut, when used correctly, helps repair the charger and protect the battery. That nut is almonds. Almonds are metabolically unique because they are rich in magnesium, vitamin E, tocopherols, monounsaturated fats, polyphenols that protect blood vessels. What the research shows is that almonds improve insulin sensitivity, reduce oxidative stress, and support endothelial function, especially in adults over 60. But, and this is critical, only when eaten properly. Here's the mistake most people make. They eat almonds roasted at high heat, coated in vegetable oils, or flavored with sugar and salt. That destroys the very compounds that make almonds protective. High heat oxidizes vitamin E. Added oils introduce inflammatory omega-6 fats. Sugar spikes insulin. Now, the whiteboard explanation. Vitamin E acts like a shield for your cell membranes. It protects neurons, muscle cells, and blood vessels from oxidative damage. But vitamin E is heat sensitive. Once degraded, almonds lose much of their anti-aging effect. Magnesium, another key nutrient in almonds, helps relax blood vessels and stabilize blood sugar. But magnesium absorption depends on proper digestion and portion control. So, here's the protocol that actually works after 60. First, choose raw or lightly dry roasted almonds with no added oils. Second, soak them overnight if possible. This reduces phytates, improves mineral absorption, and makes them gentler on digestion. Third, keep portions modest. About 8-10 almonds is enough. More is not better. Fourth, eat them earlier in the day, ideally with breakfast or lunch, not late at night. Fifth, pair them with protein or fiber. For example, almonds with Greek yogurt, eggs, or leafy greens. When eaten this way, almonds help improve blood sugar stability, reduce oxidative stress, support brain circulation, protect vision and skin. This is why almonds show up consistently in studies on cardiovascular health and cognitive aging. Now here's the bigger picture. The nuts that support longevity don't work by adding calories. They work by improving signaling. They tell your body it's safe to repair, not panic and store. If this breakdown is helping you make smarter choices, take a second to like the video. It helps this information reach more people who need it. In the next section, we'll talk about one final nut that may look boring, but has some of the strongest data for reducing inflammation and supporting brain aging when used correctly. Here's what's really going on inside your body as you age. After 60, one of the most underestimated drivers of aging is chronic low-grade oxidative stress. Not the dramatic kind you feel, but the quiet kind that slowly damages neurons, stiffens arteries, and accelerates muscle loss. This is where the last must-eat nut earns its place. Let me explain with a simple analogy. Think of aging like rust forming on metal. You don't notice it day to day, but over time it weakens the entire structure. To slow rust, you don't just remove moisture. You apply a protective coating in your body. That protective coating comes from polyphenols and carotenoids. And one nut stands out here: pistachios. Pistachios are metabolically unique because they contain lutein and zeaxanthin, brain and eye protection, polyphenols that reduce oxidative stress, a favorable fat profile with lower omega-6 burden, plant protein that supports muscle maintenance. What the research shows is that pistachios improve antioxidant status, support vascular health, and even enhance cognitive processing speed in older adults. Now here's the critical distinction. Most people ruin pistachios before they ever eat them. They buy heavily salted, dyed, roasted pistachios, often stored for months. Excess salt stresses blood pressure. Heat degrades antioxidants. Artificial coloring adds nothing but toxin load. Here's the whiteboard breakdown. Lutein and zeaxanthin accumulate in the brain and retina. They protect neurons from oxidative damage and support communication between brain cells. This is why these compounds are associated with slower cognitive decline. But these antioxidants are sensitive to heat and light. So how you eat pistachios determines whether they act like medicine or junk food. Here's the protocol that actually supports longevity. First, choose unsalted or lightly salted pistachios, preferably raw or gently roasted. Second, keep portions tight. About one small handful, 20-25 nuts. Third, eat them during the day, not late at night. Fourth, pair them with protein or Snort's fiber. Pistachios with yogurt, cottage cheese, or a salad works well. Fifth, choose slowly. Pistachios naturally slow eating, which improves satiety signaling and blood sugar control. When used correctly, pistachios help reduce oxidative stress, support eye and brain aging, improve insulin sensitivity, preserve muscle function. Now, let's step back and connect the dots. After 60, the goal is not to eliminate fat. It's to choose fats that communicate repair, not danger. the nuts to limit or avoid as daily foods: peanuts, cashews, oil-roasted mixed nuts, sweetened or flavored nut products. The nuts to prioritize strategically: walnuts, almonds, pistachios. Notice the pattern. The best nuts for aging are lower in inflammatory omega-6, rich in antioxidants, support blood vessels and the brain, easy to overdo, so portion control matters. Longevity isn't built on extremes. It's built on small, intelligent decisions repeated daily. If you're over 60 and you change nothing else, simply swap the wrong nuts for the right ones and fix the portions. You will feel it in your energy, your focus, and your metabolic health. If this content added value, like the video and subscribe. I post science-based guidance every day to help you age stronger, clearer, and more resilient naturally. If you'd like, I can. Now write the full conclusion section or create the YouTube title, description, timestamps, keywords, hashtags, and tags for this video. As we wrap up, I want to zoom out and reinforce the bigger message because this was never really about nuts. It was about how aging changes your biology and how small food choices either accelerate decline or activate repair. Here's what's really going on inside your body after 60. Your metabolism becomes less tolerant of inflammatory signals. Your insulin response slows. Your liver clears fats more slowly. Your blood vessels need more support to stay flexible, and your brain becomes more vulnerable to oxidative stress. That doesn't mean your best years are behind you. It means the rules have changed. And when you play by the new rules, the body responds remarkably well. Today you learned that some nuts, despite being labeled healthy, quietly push your body toward inflammation, insulin resistance, and fat storage when eaten the wrong way. Cashews spike insulin more than most people realize. Peanuts can irritate the gut and fuel chronic inflammation. Oil-roasted and sweetened nuts overwhelm aging detox systems. But you also learned something empowering. When chosen and used correctly, the right nuts become metabolic tools.